Hello everyone, welcome back to Art Therapy with MindSoul Meditations. Before we get started, let's take a moment to take a deep breath and let it out slowly. And another one. Let's talk about setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is a crucial aspect of maintaining mental health. It involves defining personal limits and communicating them assertively to others. By setting boundaries, individuals establish clear guidelines for behavior and interactions, which helps in fostering healthy relationships and self-respect. Take a look at some of the art submitted by the artist community on X to see their interpretations of boundaries. Each individual has a different view of what this means for them. Consider how setting boundaries should be depicted for you. Consider what personal limits or communicating your needs might look like. Art therapy can be a powerful tool in setting boundaries by providing a safe space for emotional expression and exploration. Through creative activities, you can escape to your artistic world, allowing yourself to be emotionally free and express thoughts and feelings that might be difficult to articulate verbally. In the realm of setting healthy limits, it is essential to protect your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. This involves recognizing when to say no, prioritizing self-care, and avoiding situations that compromise your boundaries and values. For additional ideas, consider a fortress in the mind, or a garden with gates, perhaps scales to show balance, or a heart that is protected by a barrier, or pathways or doors that are locked while others are open. So today we're going to create some art about setting boundaries, and this can be a really complex issue because boundaries might mean different things to you. So for example, maybe you have really strong boundaries in place to the point where you've now isolated yourself because of them. So you may want to look at creating art that depicts this situation where your boundaries are too high or too strong and you're feeling walled up. So for example, in a previous episode, I had an image of a person in a fetal position inside of an ice cube. So this was a vulnerability image, but at the same time, that person was completely closed up. If you're feeling isolated, you may want to depict this in your art. Or maybe you need to open doors and let others in, and so that's what you want to depict. Another way you may interpret boundaries is that your boundaries are too weak and you're being trampled and you're being bullied and you get called a pushover. So you need to build stronger boundaries. And so you may want to depict building walls or putting locks in place or blocking the path. Perhaps you crave more time to yourself because your boundaries are not strong enough and you want to depict yourself alone, standing on the top of a mountaintop. Another interpretation for boundaries may be that someone who's close to you has erected strong boundaries and it's left you feeling left out. Maybe you're looking to pierce those boundaries and be let in. So that might be something that you want to depict in your artwork. So today we're going to create really minimalist prompts to begin with because setting boundaries is somewhat of an abstract concept and Midjourney can actually do a really great job with those. So I'm going to start off just by doing /imagine and I'm going to ask it to create an image setting personal boundaries. I'm not going to give it anything else other than perhaps an aspect ratio. And I'm going to start with the first one being landscape. So we're going to do 16:9 and let's see what we get. And while it's doing that, I think I'm going to run another one, the exact same prompt, but I'm going to do it in 4:5. So let's start by looking at the landscape ones. I already see some problematic images, but I get the concept it's trying to produce. So let's look at those. So the top one, it looks like somebody who's trying to isolate themselves but is feeling pulled in multiple directions. So that's kind of a neat image. The second one sitting on the log bridge looks a little bit distorted. We've got legs going in multiple directions, so that's a very problematic image. The hand in the bottom, I think, is meant to be a stop, as in indicating, just stop kind of hand. And in the bottom right, I like this one. This is somebody who's out on a cliff by themselves. They're very isolated. They're alone. And this may be what you want, or this may be how you're feeling and you want to break free from it. Let's see the second set. So in the second set, again, we've got some pretty interesting images. I like the visual impact of the one in the top left with the person standing on what looks like what two mountains are coming together. So it's bridged the gap. So it's a really neat visual and a cool concept. The woman behind the fence, again, that's, I'm standing behind my barriers. The individual standing, it looks like in a keyhole, and they're alone within this sort of enclosed frame. That one actually really speaks well for boundaries, and I think that's a fantastic image. And then in the bottom right, again, we have the idea of being alone on a mountain. I might need to fix a little bit with the clouds there in the sky, but it's a pretty fantastic image. So in the top right of Midjourney, we have a search box, and this can be really handy to find any old prompts that you're looking for, any keywords that you've put into your prompts, to try and recall something you've done in the past, to reuse a prompt, or to find a prompt you already liked and modify it for your current project. So because we're getting photography type images, I want to look for one of my older prompts that I've done that has a really nice effect, that puts a nice hazy effect in my prompts, and also has some camera settings. So what I can do is I can type in, so I'm looking for Orton effect. And here, this is what I'm looking for. So what I can do from here is I can actually jump to this image, or I can just try to copy the elements that I want. So what I'm going to grab is all of this information about the Orton effect and all the camera setting information, and I'm going to reuse that. So I can copy that. So I've got some nice prompts here. I've got a fence. Fence by itself, the fist holding the fence. These are all some great images. I like this one here where it's standing out almost. That rock looks like it could break off anytime. It looks very fragile, and I like that it speaks to fragility. I'm going to recreate and rerun the bottom one here. So we see here we have the one that's the horizontal ones, I have the weirdness applied to it, and the vertical ones here I did not. So I'm going to try them both and add the Orton effect in. And I'm going to submit that, and then we'll compare the images to see what effect that has. And I think I'm going to do it here as well. So this one standing on the top of the mountain with the clouds all around, there's a certain beauty to this. I really like it. We have a lot of people on mountaintops that we're pulling up through these images. I do like the fence, but unfortunately I don't like that it's a child and it looks like the fence is going through the child. So that's a problematic image. Let's take a look at the other ones. So as I'm looking at the image of the fence, one thing that occurs to me is that your art doesn't have to have a person in it, right? So the fence itself could be your boundary. So you might choose different type of symbols, but it doesn't have to incorporate an individual in it. So if this fence, this is your representation for setting boundaries, That's all you need. This is a beautiful image to represent setting boundaries. So one thing that I envision while I'm creating these images is the idea of Rapunzel up in her tower. So I'm going to try a woman standing in the window of a tall stone tower against a mountain landscape depicting setting personal boundaries. And we'll see how that comes out. And I'm going to leave the photography style in there. So let's see our Rapunzel images and see if we got anything good from those. So here we have someone at the top of a tower. Again, it's the same idea as being on top of the mountain. And then we have another one here, sort of in that sort of window, that door, sort of the same idea as the one that was in the keyhole, which was a really stunning image. So she sort of has walls around her, but there's a bit of openness to that one as well. Here we have a huge doorway type structure that she's standing inside. I think this one here is probably closest to a Rapunzel type image, but she's not particularly high up. So we might need to rerun these again. So one thing that I found with this set of images that are vertical, some of my images, the perspective or the height of the tower wasn't quite what I had in mind. So one thing I can try is perhaps I need to go with different dimensions. So I'm going to try changing this to 9:16 and make it a far more portrait style image. So give it a little more room to build a larger tower. And I might need to be more specific about the window. The top of the tower. So let's try that. So I'm specifying that our window's at the top. That might help out a bit. So let's take a look at our new images. I don't think we're getting quite what I want. I might need to specify my camera angle and tell it that it's looking up at a woman in a tower. Might be one of the ways I can correct this. So I'm going to give that a try. And let's take a look here at our tower, and this is much better. So changing the prompt to say looking up and setting my camera perspective has definitely improved the results that I'm getting. So I'm going to open that in a browser. So I think we've got some really neat images here. The one here, it's too bad that she is at the very top of the tower. I would have much preferred to have her in the window itself. But we still have the same concept achieved even if she's at the top. Now the quality of her figure might need a little bit of improvement, but upscaling might help with that, and maybe a little bit of vary region. So the second one here, she's more in the window like I'd asked. She's definitely isolated, surrounded, unreachable, unattainable. She's definitely put her walls up. She's in her own space. So I would say that that's a pretty good image to depict boundaries. And here we have the same thing where she's up in the top of the tower of an old structure. She's got her boundaries. She's in a beautiful place. So I think that's a nice image overall. But my favorite one, I think, is this one here. So in this one, we might need to clean up a little bit how the figure looks here in the top. But I like the stark contrast with this tower and this snowy mountain valley. And she's in the middle of nowhere where nobody's going to really be able to reach her. So she's definitely setting some boundaries. And I would say that this is a really good depiction of somebody saying no. So that wraps up our art for today, and I really hope you enjoyed the style references and the new prompts, and you get an opportunity to make some really fantastic art. Today's affirmation is, I set healthy boundaries to protect my well-being. Thank you for joining me for another day of art therapy. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you had a chance to create some really amazing art. Make sure to join me again tomorrow, and I really look forward to seeing you there.